When someone blocks you, it feels like a door slamming shut in your face. No warning, no explanation, just silence. It can trigger frustration, confusion, and even anger. You start asking yourself, why did they do this? Did I do something wrong? Are they trying to erase me from their life? But let's step back for a moment and see this for what it really is. Blocking is an emotional reaction. It's not strength, it's a sign of inner conflict. When someone blocks you, they aren't winning, they're running from accountability, discomfort, and facing something real. It's a digital wall they put up because they can't handle what's on the other side. Think about it. Do truly powerful people block someone out of spite? Number A, strong person doesn't need to erase you from their view. They simply don't engage. They move on. But when someone blocks you, it means something about you unsettles them. Maybe it's guilt, regret, or their own inability to handle emotions maturely. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Instead of reacting to being blocked, focus on what's in your control. Don't chase them. Don't try to fix it. Let them sit with their decision, because blocking someone isn't an act of closure. It's a mask for avoidance. Think of it like this. If a person locks their door, is it because they don't care who's outside, or is it because they're afraid of what might come in? The act of blocking isn't indifference. It's proof that something about you still affects them. If they truly didn't care, they wouldn't need to block you at all. But here's where most people go wrong. They see being blocked as a challenge, a game to win. They try to reach out in different ways: new accounts, mutual friends, indirect messages. That's weakness. That's desperation. And desperation is the opposite of power. True power is doing nothing. True power is silence. The moment you stop caring, the moment you stop giving them any reaction, is the moment the tables turn. Suddenly they start wondering if blocking you even mattered. They expect you to be hurt. They expect you to react. When you don't, that's when they start feeling the weight of their own actions. And here's the truth. Blocking isn't permanent. It never is. Because emotions change, people get curious. They wonder what you're doing, if you've moved on, if you're happier without them. When you don't feed their need for control, that's when they start losing it. So, what do you do now? You do nothing. You don't text them. You don't stalk their profile. You don't try to prove anything. Let time do the work, because time always reveals the truth. Epicurus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In other words, if this situation has power over you, it's because you're letting it. But once you shift your focus back to yourself, your growth, your peace, your future, they lose all control over you. They blocked you? Fine, let them. Because the truth is, it's not your loss, it's theirs. And soon, they'll realize that. When they slam the door shut, what it really means is that when someone you care about suddenly blocks you, it feels like an invisible door slamming in your face. No explanation, no warning, just cold, brutal silence. One moment they're there, distant but still within reach. The next, they disappear like a ghost, leaving nothing behind but questions. If this person has an avoidant nature, things get even more confusing. Why would someone who already keeps their emotions at a distance feel the need to block you? If they don't care, why go to such extremes? Is this really their way of moving on, or is there something deeper happening beneath the surface? The truth is, blocking isn't always about you. In fact, most of the time, it's about them. It's about control, avoidance, and shutting out anything that forces them to feel something they're not ready to face. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Right now, you don't have power over their actions, but you do have power over how you respond. When someone blocks you, the first instinct is to take it personally, to see it as rejection. But look closer. If they truly didn't care, would they need to erase you? Would they need to make sure you can't reach them? Would they need to force distance instead of just moving on naturally? A person who is completely over you wouldn't need to block you. They wouldn't need to cut off every possible connection. The act of blocking is emotional, not logical. It's a defense mechanism. It's their way of controlling what they see, what they feel, what they are reminded of. Picture a child who covers their ears and closes their eyes when they don't want to hear the truth. That's what blocking is. It's a way to silence what they can't handle, to push away emotions they aren't strong enough to process. But here's where most people make a mistake. They try to fight it. They seek another way in, through mutual friends, different accounts, or desperate messages. That's the wrong move. Epicurus said, "If someone is able to provoke you, realize that your mind is implicit in the provocation." In other words, if their action gets under your skin, it's because you're giving them power over your emotions. The moment you stop caring, the moment you stop reacting, is the moment you take that power back. And let's be clear, blocking is rarely permanent. Time has a way of making people rethink their choices. Right now, they might feel that blocking you gives them control, but emotions shift, curiosity creeps in, and regret settles. When they realize you aren't chasing them, when they see that you aren't broken by their actions, that's when doubt begins to eat away at them. What should you do next? Nothing. Don't reach out. Don't try to get answers. Don't try to prove anything. Let them sit with their own decision, because silence speaks louder than words. Distance does what words never can. It forces them to feel your absence. The moment you stop seeking closure is the moment they start wondering if they made a mistake, because deep down, they expect a reaction. They expect anger. They expect sadness. They expect you to fall apart. When you don't, that's when they realize that maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who lost something valuable. Lao Tzu once said, "The best fighter is never angry." That's your mindset now. No anger, no chasing, no proving, just stillness. Let time do its work, because one day that same door they slammed in your face will have them wondering if they should have left it open. When they push you away, it's not about you. When someone removes you from their digital space, it's easy to take it personally. But this isn't just about getting rid of you. It's about what's happening in their mind. People with avoidant tendencies have a complicated relationship with emotions. They fear closeness, yet they're just as afraid of being abandoned. It's a paradox. They push you away, but deep down, they don't want you to go too far. Blocking isn't just an act of shutting you out. It's their way of controlling a situation that feels too overwhelming. They aren't just pushing you away. They're trying to protect themselves from feelings they don't know how to handle. It's like a child who touches something hot and instantly pulls their hand back. The pain is too much, so their instinct is to retreat. Sigmund Freud once said, "Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways." That's exactly what's happening here. Blocking is an avoidance way of burying emotions, but burying something doesn't make it disappear. It just delays the explosion. Right now, you might be thinking, if they fear being abandoned, why do they leave first? Why do they make the choice to block, knowing it could push me away for good? The answer is control. For someone who struggles with emotional closeness, controlling the distance gives them a sense of safety. If they feel like you might leave them, they want to be the one who leaves first. If emotions become too heavy, they want to shut it down before it spirals. It's like someone who refuses to swim too deep because they're afraid of drowning. They might enjoy the water, but the moment it starts feeling too strong, they panic and pull back, not because they don't want to swim, but because they don't trust themselves to stay afloat. When they block you, it doesn't mean they don't think about you. If anything, it's proof that something about you still affects them. Indifference doesn't need distance, but emotions, especially the ones they don't want to face, do. So, what happens now? Will they ever unblock you? Will they ever reach out again? Time has a way of forcing buried emotions to the surface. They might convince themselves they've erased you. They might believe they've shut the door for good. But silence has a way of making people listen to what they tried to ignore. When they no longer have access to you, when they can't check in from a distance, that's when the absence starts to feel real. Lao Tzu once said, "Trying to control the future is like trying to take the master carpenter's place." When you handle the master carpenter's tools, chances are you'll cut your hand. That's the trap avoidance falls into. They think blocking gives them control, but in the end, it only makes the emotions they ran from hit even harder. What should you do? Nothing. Let them sit with their choice. Let them experience the silence. Because the harder they try to bury their emotions, the stronger they'll come back later. And when that moment comes when they realize blocking didn't erase what they felt, they'll have no one to face but themselves. When they block you, it's not indifference, it's suppressed emotion. You might be thinking, if they blocked me, doesn't that mean they don't care? That's the logical assumption, but human emotions aren't always logical. Blocking doesn't always mean indifference. In fact, sometimes it's the exact opposite. People with avoidant tendencies are wired to suppress emotions. They don't let themselves feel too deeply, not because they lack emotions, but because emotions feel dangerous to them. The stronger their feelings, the more they try to push them down. And blocking? That's just another way of doing it. It's counterintuitive, but the truth is, many avoidants block the people they care about the most, not because they want to forget them, but because they don't know how to handle the depth of what they feel. It's not about moving on, it's about self-protection. Think of a dam holding back water. The more pressure builds up, the stronger the walls have to be. But pressure doesn't just disappear. It waits, it grows, and eventually it breaks through. That's what happens when someone suppresses emotions. They might think they've shut it all down, but buried emotions don't stay buried forever. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." Avoidants resist emotions, but in doing so, they make them stronger. Blocking isn't an act of forgetting, it's an act of resisting, and the more they try to erase you, the more they remind themselves that you exist. So if they have feelings, why don't they just face them? Why run? Why block? Because emotional depth terrifies them. It makes them feel out of control, and when they feel something too strongly, their instinct is to escape it before it consumes them. It's like a person afraid of drowning. Rather than learning to swim, they stay away from the water entirely. But here's what they don't realize. Emotions don't work like that. Suppressing something doesn't make it go away. It just delays the moment when it finally breaks through. And when it does, it often hits even harder. The irony is that blocking you doesn't give them peace. It doesn't truly free them. Because the very act of blocking is emotional. If they truly felt nothing, there would be no need to erase you, no need to build walls, no need to control what they see. Seneca once said, "A person who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary." That's what avoidance does. They block to avoid discomfort, but in the long run, they only create more suffering for themselves. And this is where most people make a mistake. They chase, they beg, they try to fix things, but that only feeds the cycle. The best response? Silence. No reaction. No attempt to force anything. Because avoidance is a battle within themselves. It's not your fight. The more you pull away, the more they'll have to sit with their own emotions. In time, when the suppression no longer works, when they realize blocking didn't erase what they felt, they'll have to face what they ran from, and that's when the real reckoning begins. Don't let panic control you. Master the art of silence. This is where most people lose control. They panic the moment they realize they've been blocked. Their emotions take over. They scramble to find another way in, sending long messages, reaching out through different platforms, even making new accounts just to be seen. It's desperation disguised as effort, and it never works. Think about it. If someone slams a door in your face, does banging on it over and over make them open it? If anything, it makes them lock it even tighter. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." Right now, you might feel powerless, but that's an illusion. You have more power in this situation than you think. The problem is most people don't see it. They react emotionally instead of strategically. The moment you start chasing, you give them control. You validate their decision. You confirm that they can push a button and instantly get a reaction out of you. That's why avoiding panic is your first and most important move. Ask yourself, what's the real reason you want to reach out? Is it to change their mind, to get closure, to remind them you exist? But here's the truth. If someone blocks you, they already know you exist. They've already made a choice, and no message, no pleading, no act of desperation will change that. True power comes from restraint, from silence, from not reacting the way they expect you to. When you don't respond to chaos with more chaos, you shift the energy in your favor. Think of it like a game of tug-of-war. The more you pull, the more resistance you meet. But the moment you drop the rope, what happens? The other person stumbles. They lose balance. That's what happens when you stop feeding the dynamic. When you refuse to chase, you force them to sit with their own emotions, and that silence speaks louder than any message ever could. Lao Tzu once said, "Silence is a source of great strength." But most people don't trust silence. They mistake it for weakness or inaction. In reality, silence is what creates impact. It's what forces the other person to question their decisions. Right now, they expect you to react, to try to fix things, to prove something. But what if you didn't? What if you let them wonder instead? What if, instead of seeking their attention, you gave your attention to yourself? This isn't about playing games. It's about emotional discipline, about proving to yourself that you don't need anyone's validation to be at peace. Because the moment you master your reactions, the moment you stop seeking closure from someone who shut you out, is the moment you take back all the power you thought you lost. And that's when everything starts to shift. Turn their rejection into your transformation. Someone blocked you. Now what? Most people waste time analyzing, overthinking, replaying every conversation, looking for clues. But what if, instead of obsessing over their actions, you turned your focus inward? What if, instead of chasing answers, you started healing? Right now, they expect a reaction. They assume you'll reach out, demand explanations, and try to fix what's broken. That's the pattern they've seen before. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you break the cycle? That's when everything shifts. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't control what they do. You can't force them to unblock you, but you can control how you respond. And your response, your silence, your focus on yourself, will do more than any desperate message ever could. Think of it like this. If someone throws a stone into a pond, the water ripples. But if the pond is still and undisturbed, the stone sinks without effect. Be that stillness, be that control. The moment you stop giving them the power to shake you, you become something they can't ignore. Not because you're chasing, not because you're proving anything, but because you're thriving in their absence. Healing isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about realizing that you don't need closure to move forward. Their choice to block you is their burden to carry, not yours. Seneca said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And that's the real test here. Can you keep moving forward even when someone slams the door in your face? Can you rebuild even when you never got the answers you wanted? Because when you do, when you rise from this stronger, they will feel it, they will sense it, and whether they admit it or not, they will wonder if they made a mistake. Most people stay stuck, waiting, hoping, watching for any sign of return. But not you. You're choosing something different. You're choosing yourself. And that's the kind of power no one can block. When the plot twist hits, rewrite your story. Blocking isn't the final chapter. It's merely an unexpected twist in your narrative. Think of it as that sudden turn in your favorite novel where the hero is forced to confront a hidden enemy. When someone with avoidant tendencies blocks you, it might feel like the story is ending, but in truth it's just a dramatic plot twist. They aren't writing your ending, they're simply rewriting their own storyline. Imagine watching a movie where the protagonist faces a crisis, a moment that demands a shift in perspective. That's you right now. You might be wondering, is this really the end? Am I being discarded because I'm not enough? The answer is more complex than it seems. Their decision to block you isn't a verdict on your worth. It's a reflection of their own inner turmoil, their struggle to manage emotions too intense to bear. As Eleanor Roosevelt wisely noted, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. In this plot twist, you hold the pen. You have the power to transform this moment into a turning point rather than a downfall. When they block you, they're not declaring an end to your story. They're handing you an invitation to grow. This isn't about playing by their rules or catering to their fear of intimacy. It's about reclaiming your narrative and using this setback as a catalyst for profound personal transformation. Consider this. In every great story, the hero faces adversity not by chasing every clue, but by retreating into a period of quiet reflection. They pause, assess the situation, and then act with purpose. When your avoidant ex blocks you, they're expecting you to react in predictable ways, chasing after them, demanding explanations, or trying to mend what's broken with frantic messages. But here's the twist. When you choose silence, when you focus on yourself instead of trying to decode their behavior, you begin to alter the dynamic entirely. Picture a ship caught in a sudden storm. The crew might instinctively try to fix everything at once, only to find themselves tossed further into chaos. Instead, the wisest captains steer the vessel with calm resolve, letting the storm pass while they secure the ship and regain control. Your emotional response is much like that. By not pursuing them, by not forcing an answer out of a situation that was never meant to be fixed through frantic efforts, you're taking back the helm of your own life. There's a famous saying by Napoleon Bonaparte, "Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake." Now your avoidant ex isn't your enemy. They're simply lost in their own labyrinth of fear and uncertainty. Yet by choosing to remain composed, you force them to confront the reality of their own decisions. Every moment of silence from you is like a mirror reflecting their inability to deal with genuine connection. In that reflection, they might begin to see the cracks in the walls they've built to protect themselves. Blocking, after all, is not an act of complete erasure. It's a desperate attempt to manage overwhelming emotions, a way to create distance when the intensity of feelings becomes too much to bear. But here's the paradox. While they believe that by blocking you, they're gaining control, they're actually exposing their vulnerability. They're showing that behind that digital barricade, there's a person struggling with feelings too deep to process. So, what should you do in this moment of unexpected silence? Instead of chasing, instead of sending messages from a friend's account or creating a new one just to break through their barrier, step back and focus on your own healing. Let them sit with the echo of their decision while you begin to rebuild your own inner strength. This isn't about proving something to them, it's about proving it to yourself. As you turn this twist into a turning point, remember the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In this case, the external event is there blocking, but the true power lies in how you choose to respond. Every moment you spend worrying about their actions is a moment you could use to invest in your own growth. Use this time to reconnect with yourself, nurture your passions, and embrace the opportunities for self-improvement. By choosing to channel your energy into self-care rather than chasing after someone who's not ready to face their emotions, you're not only reclaiming your dignity, you're setting the stage for healthier, more meaningful connections in the future. This isn't about punishment, it's about transformation. It's about turning rejection into a stepping stone toward a better, more resilient version of yourself. If you're ready to take that step forward, if you're ready to use this plot twist as a turning point, then join me in affirming this powerful mantra. I release the past and embrace my growth. Each block is a lesson guiding me toward deeper self-love. I honor my feelings and choose to move forward, attracting healthy connections that nourish my soul. Type it in the comments, write it down. Let it be the beginning of a new chapter where every setback becomes a setup for an even greater comeback. Remember, blocking isn't the end. It's just a twist in the tale, and you, as the hero of your own story, have the power to rewrite it. When they pull the plug, rewrite your destiny. They blocked you. Maybe it came out of nowhere, or maybe you felt it coming like distant thunder. Either way, it feels like a rug pulled from beneath your feet. One moment you had a line of communication, texts, calls, social media, and the next, it's as if you've been erased. Your first instinct might be to take it personally, to think you're not good enough, or to wonder if everything between you meant nothing. But here's the deeper truth. Often, that block isn't about you at all. It's about them and their struggle with the intensity of human connection. They've pulled the plug, but that doesn't mean your story ends here. You still have the power to rewrite your destiny. Imagine standing in front of a locked door. You could spend hours banging on it, demanding to be let in, only to hear silence echo on the other side. Or you could take a step back and notice the hallway of new doors behind you, fresh paths, new beginnings, possibilities you couldn't see before because you were so fixated on that single entry. That's exactly what it's like when someone blocks you. They slam one door, but they can't stop you from exploring everything else life has to offer. You might ask, but if they blocked me, doesn't that mean I'm meaningless to them? Not necessarily. People who fear emotional closeness often struggle with intense feelings. They block you because they can't manage the depth of what they're experiencing. It's like a person who fears water deciding never to swim again. It's not that water is worthless. It's that it overwhelms them. So in many cases, blocking is a desperate attempt to control an emotional tidal wave. If you were truly insignificant, they'd simply let you fade away without a second thought. The block itself is proof that the connection, however messy, still matters on some level. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, once said, "Well-being is realized by small steps, but is truly no small thing." Right now, your path to well-being may seem scattered. You might feel lost, betrayed, or confused, but the first small step is acceptance. Accept that the block happened. Accept that you can't change it by force. Once you let go of the urge to break down that door, you'll start to see other paths unfold. That acceptance isn't resignation, it's the beginning of your real power. Think of a painter who splashes bright red on a canvas. The color might look jarring at first, out of place, almost too intense. But instead of trying to scrape it off or paint over it, the artist embraces that burst of red and builds around it, turning what seemed like a mistake into the centerpiece of a masterpiece. You can do the same with this block. Rather than letting it define you, integrate it into your life in a way that creates something new. Use it as motivation to focus on parts of yourself that have been neglected. Ask yourself the questions most people are too afraid to confront. What do I truly want from this relationship? Closure, redemption, or a second chance? Am I chasing them because I fear being alone? By diving into these questions, you'll uncover the root of your own emotional patterns, and once you understand that root, you can begin to change how you respond to future twists and turns. Epicurus, a Stoic philosopher, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is your chance to show how you react when someone pulls the plug on your connection. You could panic, reaching out on alternate accounts, leaving lengthy voicemails, or sending messages through mutual friends. But that only gives them more reason to keep you at arm's length, confirming their fear that relationships mean losing control. Or you could choose the path less traveled: silence, self-reflection, and genuine self-care. Picture it like a seesaw. When one person suddenly jumps off, the other side slams to the ground. But what if you gracefully step off the seesaw yourself, landing on your feet with composure? You rob them of the satisfaction of seeing you crumble. You maintain your balance and self-respect, and that is infinitely more powerful than any frantic attempt at reconnection. A practical question might cross your mind. Won't they forget me if I do nothing? In reality, absence often speaks louder than words. When they realize you're not trying to climb the walls they've built, they're left alone with their own decision. They might start wondering if blocking you actually brought them peace, or if it only intensified their inner conflict. Regardless of whether they ever come to that realization, you'll have already moved forward, stronger, more self-aware, and free from the grip of someone else's emotional limitations. One last question is inevitable. Will they ever unblock me? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. That's for them to decide. But by the time they consider it, you may have evolved into a version of yourself that no longer craves their approval. The very act of waiting for them to return is another form of giving away your power. Instead, take this moment to embark on a deeper journey of self-love and personal development. If they do come back, it'll be on your terms, not theirs. Life's greatest plot twists aren't the ones you see coming. They're the ones that catch you off guard, forcing you to adapt, grow, and transform. When someone pulls the plug on you, you have a choice. Let their fear define your worth, or use their action as a catalyst for change. Remember that one blocked door cannot barricade all your future possibilities. When they pull the plug, you get to rewrite your destiny, and that's a power no block button can ever take away from you. When they vanish, forge your own path. Sometimes it happens in an instant. One moment you're exchanging messages, maybe not frequently, but enough to feel a sense of connection. Then suddenly you see it. You're blocked. No warning, no explanation. Just a digital wall where there used to be an open door. It feels jarring, as though you were mid-conversation and the other person simply disappeared into thin air. It's natural to wonder, what does this mean? Did I do something wrong? Do they hate me now? Yet the irony of being blocked is that it often has very little to do with you, and far more to do with the blocker's relationship with their own emotions. People with avoidant tendencies or those overwhelmed by strong feelings sometimes hit the block button because it seems like the only way to handle a surge of inner turmoil. It's easy to interpret this as a statement on your worth, that you're too annoying, too clingy, or too unimportant to merit honest communication. But as you stand on the outside of that digital blockade, consider a crucial truth. If they truly felt nothing, if you truly didn't matter, there would be no need to block you. They would simply let the contact fade away, ignoring you until your presence no longer registered. Blocking, on the other hand, is an active move. It requires effort, a choice. It signals that they feel something, a discomfort, an intensity, or a fear, and they're trying to manage it the only way they know how. The ancient Stoics believed that our power lies in how we respond to events, not in the events themselves. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Being blocked can spark a spiral of negative emotions and frantic actions, desperate attempts to get unblocked, to be seen, to be acknowledged. But consider the alternative. Do nothing. Yes, truly nothing at all. Embrace the event as something outside your control and shift your attention inward toward what you can control, your own mind, your own emotional landscape, your own growth. It sounds deceptively simple, but it requires a profound act of self-discipline to remain calm when someone has just effectively erased you from their digital life. By choosing silence and refusing to chase after them, you're doing more than just playing hard to get. You're taking back your autonomy. Chasing, pleading, or trying to circumvent the block rarely leads to resolution. In fact, those actions often reinforce whatever caused the block in the first place. If they block you because they felt emotionally overwhelmed, your continued pursuit only affirms their fear of drowning in heightened emotions. The best move, paradoxically, is to let them come to terms with their own decision. Sometimes that might mean they'll never unblock you. But ask yourself, do you really want access to someone's life when they've so clearly closed the door, at least for now? Accept the boundary they've placed. This acceptance doesn't diminish your worth. It elevates your respect for the natural flow of relationships. Think of a pot of water on the stove. As it begins to boil, the steam builds up. If you cover it tightly and keep the heat high, pressure will force the lid to rattle and steam to escape violently. That's what blocking often represents, someone slamming the lid on emotions they can't handle. But the steam doesn't vanish, it only builds. Eventually, the heat might force them to lift the lid and deal with what's boiling over. Until that moment, your best bet is to remove your hand from the stove entirely. Don't burn yourself trying to force a confrontation they're clearly not ready for. In these quiet spaces, while you're shut out and your mind desperately wants closure, focus on your own healing. This is where you can transform what looks like a painful rejection into a launching pad for personal growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Let this be a guiding principle. You can't control that they blocked you, but you can master your internal narrative. Instead of telling yourself that you've been discarded, tell yourself you've been redirected away from a connection that currently isn't working toward a deeper understanding of yourself. That doesn't mean it won't hurt. Feelings of heartbreak, frustration, and confusion are normal emotions, especially when tied to romantic or deeply personal connections. They can sting. But allow that hurt to move through you rather than letting it push you into impulsive actions. Journaling can help, meditation can help, talking to a trusted friend or therapist can help. The key is to ensure that your response to being blocked isn't just another round of self-blame or frantic attempts at reconnection. It's a chance to show yourself that you can handle life's twists and turns with composure and dignity. Some might wonder, Isn't silence just a game? But it's not about playing games. It's about choosing a path that doesn't feed the same dynamic that led to the block in the first place. If they fear emotional intensity, chasing them with even more intensity does nothing but fuel that fear. Silence, on the other hand, respects their boundary, even if it was set in a moment of panic or confusion. That silence, ironically, can become a powerful statement of self-confidence. It says, I don't need to beg for access to someone's life. I don't need to prove my worth through pursuit. Imagine you're a lighthouse on a stormy coast. You stand firm, shining your light. Ships either come closer to your shore or sail away, but you remain steady. You don't chase the ships, you provide guidance. If a vessel chooses to move toward deeper waters, you can't stop it, nor should you. That's their choice. Your role is to stand resilient, shining regardless of who comes near or who sails away. Over time, being blocked might transform from a sting into a gift, a moment that propelled you to cultivate inner resilience and a clearer vision of the relationships you truly desire. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually as you learn to trust your own value rather than letting someone else's reaction define you. Seneca once advised, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." By relinquishing your need for immediate answers, you spare yourself the agony of trying to force a resolution that remains outside your control. Will they ever unblock you? Possibly, but that outcome, ironically, matters less than it seems. If they do, you'll have used this time to grow stronger. You'll be prepared to communicate differently, or perhaps to let the connection remain at a distance, if that's what's healthiest. If they don't, you'll already be moving forward, wiser, steadier, and more connected to your own sense of purpose. The real victory in being blocked isn't winning someone back. It's reclaiming the energy you once directed toward winning their approval. It's channeling that energy into discovering who you are and what you want from life. It's allowing yourself the space to recognize that your worth isn't measured by someone else's readiness, or lack thereof, to keep you in their world. None of this means you'll never feel sadness or longing again. There may be days when you miss them, when the memories resurface, or when you wonder if things could have turned out differently. That's normal. Emotions ebb and flow. But with every wave of sorrow that passes, you gain a bit more clarity about what truly matters. Your own well-being, your own emotional balance, and your capacity to approach life's challenges with grace. Being blocked is an event. How you respond is an art. The Stoics teach us to separate the things we can control, our actions, our perspectives, our intentions, from the things we cannot. Their digital barricade is not your responsibility, your healing is. So let them vanish if that's what they need to do. Let them sit with their own tumultuous sea of feelings. Meanwhile, you can redirect your energy into charting a course that honors your peace, your purpose, and your potential. By the time they realize that blocking you didn't grant them the closure or emotional safety they sought, you might find you've long since charted your own path. You may even discover that this unexpected silence has become the very thing that helped you forge a more resilient, self-assured version of yourself. That's the ultimate power of responding with stillness rather than panic. You aren't just waiting for them to come back. You're actively building a life that aligns with your deepest values. If they do return, they'll find you standing on solid ground, steady as a lighthouse in a storm, shining your light for those ready to see it, but never chasing those who drift away.